All right, this is Patrick Rogers, and today we have the privilege to have Dave Albin on the show. And Dave is the CEO of the Firewalking Academy. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Hey, man. Thanks, Patrick. Great to be here, man.
Yeah, great to have you. So check this out. Dave is the #1 Firewalk instructor in America. And for those of you who don't know, you've probably heard of it. Firewalking, it's a 1,000-year-old rite of passage ritual where you literally walk across hot burning coals. Right. So having worked for Tony Robbins, right, the leader, everybody knows Tony Robbins and firework. So for 19 years, Dave actually led Tony Robbins' firewalking experiences, and he started Firewalking Productions in 2014. And since then, Dave has firewalked hundreds of thousands of people. He and Tony Robbins set a world record in London in 2005, walking over 12,300 people. So Dave's success has a scary and violent past. On June 8th, 1988, he put a gun to his head to stop the excruciating pain from both drug and alcohol addiction. And in 2023, congratulations, my friend, will mark 35 years of sobriety. Dave's clients now include, you might have heard of companies like Google, NASA, Chick-fil-A, YMCA, RE/MAX. So again, Dave, great to have you. I can't wait to dive into your journey and Firewalking Academy and everything. Before we get to that, what's one interesting fact about yourself that not many people know?
I think it has a lot to do with my past in terms of being adopted and being raised by my aunt and uncle. And yeah, that's probably, one of the most, you don't talk about that in parties kind of a thing, if you will, right?
Oh, hey, nice to meet you. I was raised by my aunts and uncles. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
So I read a bit about your journey, but tell us a little bit more. I mean, we're working with Tony Robbins for that many years. Walk us through that journey a bit, man.
Well, it did start at a young age, is where it all got primed. I was born to a single mom. My biological father, 2 months before I was born, they had put a plate in his head. He was a pilot in Korea, and we don't know exactly what happened, but they had to put a plate in his head to save his life. And it also took his life, Patrick, because two months before I was born, he had complained to my mom all the time about a lot of pain. And 2 months, again, he said he was going to the grocery store one day. She never heard from him again. And so there she was. She already had 2 boys. She was living with her mother, my grandmother, and another cousin. So there was like 5, 6 of us living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood, California, across the street from Hollywood High School. And so when I turned 5, my mom put me up for adoption, did a very loving thing, and my aunt and uncle adopted me. And then and things were great for a long time. And then when I turned 11, they basically set me down on the first day of summer in 1964 and said, David, hey, we're not your parents. So that's when things took a turn. That's when they started drinking. That's when I started drinking.
Oh my gosh.
And it just progressively got worse. By the time I was in high school, they said, they pulled me into the principal's office one day and said, Mr. Albin, we think it's probably a good time for you to leave our high school. I'm like, okay.
Holy cow. All right. Then.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, okay, listen, don't be kidding, man. This isn't funny, man. You guys serious about this, right?
Yeah.
Because I wasn't, my entrepreneurial spirit, Patrick, started when I was a kid. Literally, I learned early on there was money laying on the ground. And what I mean by that, right? I lived across the street from a golf course. And so I would take my Stingray bike and I'd go ride the perimeter of that golf course, and I found golf balls everywhere. Sure. And so there was money laying on the ground, and I would take them, I'd clean them up, I'd put them I'd go over to the golf course and get the actual boxes that the golf balls came in, and I'd go into the parking lot and I started selling them back to the golfers. And then my mom grew beautiful flowers in the backyard, and she would arrange them for me. She'd cut them at an angle, not flat at the bottom, but at an angle. And she did that because more water would get into the flower. Right. And then she also put 7-Up in the bucket where all the
little sugar.
Little sugar in there, man, and those flowers lasted forever. And I started selling those on a street corner, and I started learning to negotiate. And again, money was laying on the ground and it was growing out of the ground. So I learned that at a really young age, which was very powerful, and it's carried with me to this day. And then, you know, after getting kicked out of high school, I got married 3 times. I was drug infested, and alcoholism was running rapid through my, you know, my family and through me. And on June 8th, as you said, in 1988, I woke up that morning. I said, that's it, man. I'm done. I'm out. I cannot do this. The emotional pain was intense. The physical pain was intense. And the only option I thought I had was to put a bullet in my head. And something somewhere, I was married to a woman at the time, had 3 kids. And I remember thinking, dude, if you pull that trigger, you realize what you're going to do to these kids. That's a horrible thing to do.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, we hear about suicide. You know, when we do that, when we kill ourselves, we kill everybody around us. So I was like, you can't do that. You got to think of something else.
Yeah. Plan B, man.
Plan B was, and I don't even know to this day how the thought of calling Alcoholics Anonymous even got in my head, because I didn't know who AA was.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody that was in AA. I'd never heard of AA.
Something. The universe sent it to you somehow, man.
Yeah, it sure did. The universe definitely sent it. Something happened. So I called them, and boom, I went to my first meeting, and I was hooked. Next thing I know, I picked up a chip for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, 9 months, and then the 1-year chip. And it stuck. I never went back out. I never played with it again. And then simultaneously, the personal development industry entered into my life at the same time. And the reason for that was I had insomnia. So I was up late all the time, right? My sleep patterns were all over the place. And one night, there I am. There he is, man. Mr. Infomercial himself, you know, a young Tony Robbins in 1988 selling his personal power program, 30-day program, right? Came on, I jokingly say it came on these little white things called cassette tapes.
Yeah, right.
Right.
The ones you rewind with a pencil.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a nightmare, right? You pull it out and go, oh my God. You know, you take a pencil, man.
Get the tape back in.
Just put it back in, right? And that was just magical. I bought Tony's program. I went through it. I did what the man taught me to do, and it worked. And so I started making some pretty major changes. I started working out. I started a new business, and I had a really positive attitude and outlook on life because of being influenced by Mr. Robbins. Well, one of my buddies in AA noticed it. He's like, dude, what are you doing? What's going on, man? This is more than AA. I said, well, I've been, listening to this guy by the name of Tony Robbins. And he goes, I know who Tony Robbins is. And so I told him I had the program, and he goes, man, I'd love to go through that. And I said, well, if you promise me you'll go through it, I'll loan it to you. And he said, oh, I swear I will. I promise. Absolutely. So he did. Well, 7 years later, I get a phone call from Dan. And he's like, hey, man, did you know that Tony Robbins is coming to town? This is in like 1995, right?
Yeah.
Started in 88.
That's crazy. Yeah.
95. Boom. He goes, dude, you got to go with me. Come on, let's go.
Yeah. Check this out.
We did. He took care of everything. In fact, when he got off the phone, he said, hey, man, I'll take care of it. Let me call you back. And he called me back an hour later and said, done. Pick up the tickets at will call. They told us to bring a good attitude, be ready to play full out, drink a lot of water, make sure you stay really hydrated, and bring snacks because you're going to spend a lot of time in the room. What an understatement that was. Because when we got to the event, Tony took the stage at 2:00 in the afternoon. Well, hell, the next thing we know, oh, by the way, let me back up. When he's telling me about this on the phone call originally, he goes, he's getting ready to get off the phone. He goes, oh, by the way, we're going to be doing a firewalk. I remember thinking, right? I'm like, oh, hell no. This is what's going on. This is dialogue in my head.
Not for me. Yeah.
Not for me, pal. Maybe you are. Maybe
everybody else but me. Yep.
Maybe that's for the crazies, but I'm sure not doing it. Of course, I'm not telling that to Dan, right? I don't want to think that I'm wussing out, right? So, yeah, sure, Dan, sounds interesting. Well, when you get to the event, Tony takes the stage at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, Patrick, it's after midnight.
Oh, geez.
Been in a room with Tony Robbins.
Just goes that fast.
10 hours.
Wow.
And all of a sudden, TR goes, take your shoes off. And I'm like, oh, no, you're not tricking me, pal. I ain't falling for that one. Well, when I'm sitting there, I'm in a room with 3,500 people at this event, right?
Yeah.
And they're all taking their shoes off. And I'm like, no, people don't fall for it, And so now I've got a dilemma. Do I take my shoes off or not? Because if I don't, and I walk out there, they're going to be going, look at the guy with
social pressure, man. Peer pressure.
Social pressure, man. Here it comes. So I'm like, just take my shoes off. I'll go hide in the back.
Yeah.
So that's my strategy. Well, hell, when he gets you going out there, guess what he gets everybody to do? He gets you to start clapping and chanting.
Yeah.
Not 3,500 people are like, yes, yes.
Yeah. That's a lot. That's a lot of energy coming in.
That's a lot of energy. It gets worse. When you get out there, he's got African drummers. So it's dun, 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 dun. And, you know, it's unlike anything you can imagine. It is off the chain intense. And then, you know, he's got a giant fire built over in the corner. It's huge. It's every bit of 30 feet wide and 70 feet long. And they stack wood on it all day. And they just keep adding wood. Well, after 10 hours, it renders this big, giant, beautiful pile of coals.
Yeah.
So what do you do with 3,500 people? Well, they took wheelbarrows over to that big fire, loaded the coals in a wheelbarrow. They brought the wheelbarrow in between 2 lanes of sod, a fire lane, 3 feet wide, 18 feet long. And then they just took a flathead shovel and they sprinkled the coals on top of the grass. And that's what you walked on. Well, I'm in the back. I'm hiding out. I am not doing this. Right. So I'm cool. I'm back here. Nobody's going to know. I'm good. Well, here's the thing. Robbins uses firewalking because he knows. He studied it. It's one of the most life-changing experiences anybody can go through. And he knows it. And he wants to create the paradigm shift. He wants everybody to go through it. And so he knows people are going to hide out, right? He knows there's cowards like me hiding out in the back. So what's he
looking
do?
for you? He's looking for you.
He trains people to go look for you.
That's right.
And they come and then I'm back there, and all of a sudden here comes this guy, and he makes eye contact with me. And Tony must train these guys. Once you make eye contact, don't take your eyes off.
Don't let it off. Yeah, you're over there trying to do this.
Yeah, right. I'm like, dude,
I'm in. He's coming in for you.
He's coming in. Eyes locked. He gets probably, 20 feet from me, and he kind of leans into me, and he looks kind of puzzled. And he's like, "Are you okay?" Of course, when we're not okay, what do we say? "Oh yeah, I'm fine.
I'm good
here, brother. Yeah, sure. Be on your way. We're good." And he's like, "Oh, good." He goes, "So listen, hey, you going to walk tonight?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not." Like, didn't you get the memo, pal? And so, I had a pretty strong tonality with the guy. And all of a sudden he goes, "Hey, that's not a problem. We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do." And I'm like, "Oh, wow. Okay. I like this guy. He's going to get me out of here." Well, guess what he did? Here's a stranger. I don't know who this guy is.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here on your show right now if it wasn't for this guy, right?
Yeah.
He says, "Well, wouldn't you at least like to watch?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I would. Yeah, this should be entertaining. Let's go watch these people burn their feet off." And so he goes, "Well, listen, man, you can't see anything from back here." And he's right. I'm 100 yards away. I got 3,500 people in front of me. I can't see anything. I can hear it. I can see the big fire over there. I can hear the chanting, the drums. They're starting to walk. They're screaming. They're yelling. They're celebrating. I mean, again, it is unlike anything you could imagine. And so he goes, "Well, listen, man, just get in line, and eventually you'll get up there and you'll be able to see it."
He tricked you there.
Yeah, he did.
Just hop in line.
Just get in line. Now, in his defense, he's telling the truth, because I couldn't see anything. Yeah. And so I get in line. I'm kind of walking along, and all of a sudden this guy comes up to me and he whispers in my ear, and he goes, "He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go." And pew, he just took off. He just disappeared into the night. And I'm like, what the hell was that? And so all of a sudden I get to a point, and I'm in a position now where I can see at an angle. I can't see in front of me, but I can see him at an angle. And Patrick, they're doing it. And your brain's going, why? What are you doing? Metaphorically, what's going on here?
Yeah.
I mean, why?
It doesn't make sense.
There's no sense to it at all. Or is there? Right? And so I'm watching it, and I'm mesmerized. I'm in a trance.
Yeah.
It's like a car accident. Don't look at it. Don't look at it. And
right.
You do nothing but stare at it. Right.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, next thing I know, boom, there I am. I'm at the front of the line. And I'm looking down, and that fire lane's like 3 feet wide, 18 feet long.
Right,
the coals are sprinkled on top.
Right.
They're glowing bright red. There's a wheelbarrow there. You can feel the heat coming off. And people are clapping and chanting the drums. I mean, I literally thought my heart was going to jump out of my chest. Yeah. And I'm staring into the abyss. Well, there's a trainer standing there. And all of a sudden he goes, eyes up. Like, oh shit. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. I remember now. 10 hours in a room with Tony Robbins. What did he teach me to do? Keep my eyes up. Don't stare at what you fear. Look to the celebration end. Keep your eyes on that.
Yeah.
Right. And so the next thing you know, the trainer goes, squeeze your fist and say yes. And I went, yes. And he went, stronger. And I went, yes. Well, he can tell I wasn't in a peak state. You know, I was leaving a lot on the table. Well, he screamed at me.
Right.
And now I threw my hands in the air. I scream as loud as I can. And he goes, go, go, go. Without even hesitating, I took off.
Nice.
Nice, right? Well, here's the first thing I learned about firewalking. When you take the first step, oh, you'll take the second, third, fourth, and fifth. I guarantee you, right? So he's got a couple of guys at the end of the fire lane, and they lock hands and they stop you. And they're like, stop, wipe your feet and celebrate. And so now I'm wiping my feet and I'm celebrating. And all of a sudden I'm like, what? What the hell happened?
What?
Right? How did I get here? I'm not doing this.
Last thing I knew, I was over there. I'm like, no, not doing this.
Right. And I look back and the coals are glowing bright red. And all of a sudden I go, oh my gosh, I've burnt myself really bad. And I look at my foot, I look at it and I go, it's dirty, but there's no burns. Oh, it's my other foot. I look at the foot, it's dirty and there's no burns. So I just walked on coals that are 1,000 degrees. I had no idea how I did it. I wasn't going to do it. And I did it and I was successful.
Wow.
And now you're in the celebration side of things, right? And people are going nuts. I mean, it's exhilarating. It's like, you know, you automatically think, hey, I can accomplish anything. I just walked on coals that are 1,000 degrees, man. Well, so there's that side of it, right? In fact, and I remember a guy asked me one time, he goes, did you wash your feet that night when you went to bed? I went, no. I wanted to make sure, you know, I kept looking at my feet for a few days and didn't want to wash them. But here's where it gets really, really interesting. And this is what got me, was the next day. Yeah. So this is, by the way, this is a 4-day event. This is called UPW, Unleash the Power Within, the Firewalk experience. 4 days. Day one, we do the Firewalk. Now it's day 2. 3,500 people standing in the foyer getting ready to go into the venue. Yeah. And I to this day, I've never seen anything or witnessed anything like it in my life. People were getting along like you would not believe. They were laughing. They're crying. They're hugging, they're talking, they're communicating. You could hear them talking about their story, about the Firewalk. And so everybody's self-worth had been raised at the same time. And so your self-confidence, your self-belief about yourself, and we were vibrating at such a high level that you could just feel it, man. It was intense. Wow. Well, that's what got me. I met one of Tony's trainers later in the weekend, and we got to talking, and I said, man, this must be really cool to be part of this. And he goes, oh yeah, it's insane. We get to do this all the time. And he says, see all those people over there wearing those black and pink shirts? And I went, yeah. And he goes, they're all volunteers. He goes, so listen, man, when you get home, call Robbins Research and tell them to send you an application for a volunteer crew member. And they'll send it to you and fill it out. You might get lucky. They might choose you. Well, I did it. As soon as I got home, I called Robbins. They sent me the application. I filled it out. I sent it back in. And a month later, I got a letter in the mail that said, congratulations. You've been selected to crew with the Anthony Robbins companies.
That's so
cool.
That
was it, man. Now I'm in. So I volunteered 4 or 5 times. You know, I had a military background and a security background. So they wanted to pull me into the security detail to help with a lot of Tony's celebrities, which was really cool. And then because I lived on a farm and I had experience with tools and running pieces of equipment, knew how to use a log splitter, right? They pulled me into the fire team. Later that year in 1996, 97, they offered me a subcontractor's position. And to fast forward this, in 2003, after being in the environment for quite a while, Tony offered me the position as fire captain, which meant that I would travel the world with him. And I was in charge of all of his firewalks globally.
Wow, so cool, man.
It was freaking just, you know, what a dream come true. In fact, he paid for my family to travel with me. I homeschooled, right? So he wanted my family to come, which they did. In fact, you know, when my kids firewalked the first time, my daughter was 6 and my son was 9. Their very first event, get this, right, was Sydney, Australia. And so it went on. And then in 2014, I'm driving down the road, my phone rings and it's Google. And Google wants to talk, you know, they're like, hey, are you the Dave Albin that does the firewalks for Tony Robbins? I'm like, yeah, what's up? What can I do for you? And they said, well, if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you. And I'm like,
wow.
Okay, what you got? You know, so they, you know, I'm like, you know, I'm not in a non-compete. So Homeboy's a free agent. I can do whatever I want. And so we ended up doing a glass walk for Google. In fact, I did 2 of them. I did one the following year. And the reason is because they were bringing me in. They had 148 of their executives that went through a very intense training program, 9 months. And they wanted to anchor in the experience on the final day at the graduation before they had lunch. And, you know, they even had some beers and stuff afterwards. So that's how, you know, that all took place. And then once I was there, I had a conversation with a couple of the execs and they said, hey man, we just want to let you know something. There's a huge marketplace for what you do. And there's really nobody out there doing it anywhere close to the level that you are. And he said, corporate America will eat you alive.
Absolutely.
Right? Because every CEO's got the same daunting task. How do you keep your people motivated? How do you keep them inspired? How do you lift their self-confidence and their self-belief and their self-worth? Well, guess what? You do what Tony Robbins does. You create a firewalk experience for them. And then collectively, they all go through it together. I call it, you know, kind of a near-death experience. Of course, not quite as intense, but pretty darn close. And it creates change. It works. It creates the paradigm. Next thing I know, Patrick, I'm at NASA. I'm at Notre Dame. I'm at Virginia Tech, Remax, Chick-fil-A, Heineken, Microsoft, the EO organization, right? Hell, we did 5 gigs last year for the Entrepreneurs Organization. And we did everybody from the YMCA. I've done, you know, for junior high schools and high schools. And so my career just went nuts. And so last year, one of my really big clients said, hey, Dave, you ought to consider doing something. You ought to consider creating an academy. He said, that way companies could send somebody to you. They could be a trainer, they could be a coach, they could be an entrepreneur, whatever. You train them how to do all this stuff, give them support, and then they could go back into their own companies and do this. And so I did that. I'm like, okay, that, you know, that makes a lot of sense. In fact, I've got the academy coming up this year in October. We decided to only allow 10 people at a time. So that way it keeps it intimate and they get one-on-one training with me. As a matter of fact. So
are you still doing the adventures as well? Or are you
yeah.
mainly focusing on the academy to train the trainer?
Yeah,
both. Okay, cool.
Right. So some client come to me and they go, nope, don't want to do that. Don't want to go to your academy. It's really great. Looks really awesome. But no, I don't want to do that. I want to write you a check. You create it. You deliver it. You facilitate it. You clean it up. And we'll write you a check. And so, of course, we still do that on a regular basis.
So I get the from a personal standpoint, right? You get there and you think, oh, this is something I can't do, right? Excuse after excuse, whatever. You're motivated, you're encouraged, you're hyped up, you do it, and then you're like, wow, I accomplished something I never thought possible, right? So if I can do this, I can do anything. So from a personal standpoint, right, I totally understand the firewalking experience, although I've never done it. Walk me through, like, how does it boost the culture or a team to be able to, come back together and work better together?
Because again, I think it goes back to what I experienced on day 2. When we were all standing in that foyer. I saw it with my own eyes. I was like, wow, look at how connected we are. Look how everybody's treating each other humanistically with love and kindness and respect.
So it's almost like you're getting an elevation in self-confidence, an elevation in consciousness, awareness, and you're just all more supportive of each other.
Yeah, there's no question about it. When you experience something that extraordinary collectively,
together,
it creates a camaraderie.
Common experience. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool.
And so it works every time. It's not like, oh, it'll work sometimes, or no, it works every time. One of the things I did is I took the Firewalk to another level, because I have time to be able to do that. So we include the board break with the Firewalk. And what that does is that I take them through the martial arts move of just a simple break a board with your bare hands. But what sets it up is I have them write something on front of the board they need to move towards. I have them write something on the back they need to move away from. And then I invite them to write anybody's name on the board that they're in conflict with. If you're out of sorts with somebody, you know, whatever that is, if there's reconciliation or forgiveness that needs to take place, put their name on the board. It ends tonight. Stop carrying around the resentment. Let it go. And then the other thing I did to kind of create a rite of passage in the Firewalk is I have them write anybody's name on the board that they've lost. And that really adds an incredible dynamic to the whole process. So then they break the board. I take them out to the Firewalk. We walk them, and then they come back and they put their board into the fire. And so we put that on video for them. We take photographs of that. And I also have them take the board and before they break it and take a photo of it so they can see the front and back side of the board and, you know, put it on their phone as a screensaver or whatever. So now when you take two really powerful experiences like that, they're never going to forget that. It's so deeply embedded in their mind now, it'll never go away. And you know, they may not remember me, Patrick. They maybe not remember even what I said, but what they're going to remember the experience. That'll never ever go away. And you know, and I talk to any CEO or company or entrepreneur that's ever come to my events. And I so tell me, so what happened on Monday after the Firewalk on Friday and Saturday? Because you got to see how these people are working together.
Yeah.
You know, it's just magical. It's a beautiful thing to watch. It's just a really, really awesome way to bring your people together collectively. Because, you know, and as you know, COVID ripped everybody apart.
Oh, totally. I could see this being a huge fit for so many companies. And one of the things you were saying is that dissension really impacts production.
Oh my gosh, yeah, right? Because they're all fighting. Mask wearer. No, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm getting a vaccine. I'm getting 3 of them. I'm not getting any. I love Donald Trump. I hate Donald Trump. It just it goes on and on and on and on and on. Right, and any CEO knows that's going to affect his bottom line, because if the people aren't working well together, production is going to go into the toilet. And so, you know, and I get it. A CEO's got a very daunting task. He's got to fix it. And so how do you do it? Just as one way to do it. And
very cool.
Yeah, very cool.
And I know you were saying one of the things was that when you do something like this, or really anything, right, is that the CEO, you really encourage the CEO to go first.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, that's just good leadership, right? Lead by example, get out there in front. And then once you get that, then you pull them in together and you walk together as a team. You know, being a CEO, it's tricky. And, you know, entrepreneurship and CEOs, you know, we walk the beat of a different drum. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. It's very lonely. You're out there all by yourself. And, you know, there's a lot of people that want you to fail. Right. And so you got to be able to step through all that. And on the other hand, it's very exhilarating. You know, there's nothing greater than being a CEO that takes the company and the profitability. And, you know, I'm all about the golden handcuffs. I'm all about treating your people, because, you know, the bottom line is that, you know, I talk to CEOs about this all the time. So if I was to come into your company and I went out there and I picked 5 people random and I pulled them aside and I'd say, so tell me about your CEO.
Yeah.
What do you think about that person? What do you feel about that person? What are they going to say? Right. So that's a pretty scary option, if you will. And I've had some do it. Yeah, do that. You know, it's like that undercover boss, right? The CEOs that go out there and do that, right? I think that's a really good show, and it kind of shows what's going on, you know, inside of your people's head. You know, I think the sweet spot for any CEO is that if his people love him, adore him, and respect him, and will do what he asks them to do, because that's leadership to me, right? Is getting someone to do something that they wouldn't normally do without the encouragement of good leadership. And it really comes down to that. And so, yeah, being a CEO is great. And it's also, as you know, your listening audience knows, man, it's very challenging. So,
Well, I know another thing that you said you mentioned you talk a lot about in your trainings and teachings and your motivations and your fireworks is achievement versus fulfillment.
oh gosh, yeah. Oh, it's so scary because I watch it, I see it every day, especially for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And what I tell them is like, look, man, you're not going to get to the end of your life and go, well, I wish I'd have spent more time making money and less time with my family.
Right, right.
I mean,
Yeah.
come on, man. You've got to get dialed in. Robbins will tell you uh, that achievement without fulfillment is absolute total failure.
Mm,
Because again, that's not the sweet spot, right?
mm.
Um, Fulfillment is everything. And I believe if you help enough people get what they want in life, you'll always get what you want. It's just a universal code. It's the way it works. You don't have to look far to see. It's like, look at Richard Branson. Look what he does. Look what he's created. And he's the first one that'll tell you, don't focus on your customer, focus on your people, and let
Focus
your
on your
people
people.
take care of
Yeah.
your customers.
Yeah.
They'll do it
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than an employee or a client that loves your company and loves you, and they're out there screaming it from the rooftops. So create raving fans, man, and you'll win this game called business for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so powerful, that whole concept of achievement versus fulfillment, because I fell in the trap for years, 15 years. Oh yeah, trying to become a millionaire, trying to do this, try and do that. And along the way, I wasn't present. I wasn't enjoying and fulfilling my life with my children and family and everything. And I see so many business owners, so many CEOs, so many entrepreneurs, young ones specifically, that are falling in that trap. And
Yeah,
it's a tough trap to fall into, because
it
then you
is.
look back and you're like, holy shit, man, I
Well,
had such an opportunity.
you can rationalize it so easily.
Oh
Well,
yeah. Yeah.
we got to do business. We got to bring in the money. It's like, well, okay. Tell me how that works out for you.
That's right.
I learned the lesson the hard way, and I have no problem. I'm not proud of what I'm about to
Yeah.
say, but it
Yeah.
worked for me. And that was one afternoon, I'm in the office, and my son and I are talking, and he wanted to go play catch, and I said, yeah, we'll do that. Let me finish up what I'm doing here, and I'll play catch with you later in the afternoon. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Next day,
Yeah.
guess what I told my son?
Yeah. I
Hey,
gotta
yeah,
finish
Davey,
this up.
yeah, let me
Let's
finish
do
my
it.
work and
Yeah.
I'll go out there. And he goes, that's what you told me yesterday, Dad.
Yeah. It's
And
like Jim Carrey, liar, liar, right?
yeah, exactly. It cut
Yeah,
me like a
exactly.
knife. And I remember
Yeah, man.
I made a vow to myself. I made a creed. Nope. I don't care. Look, I know, they say money's the root of all evil, and, the love of money and all these kinds of
Yeah.
things. And
Yeah.
here's what I believe about money.
Hmm.
If you have enough money, it'll solve all your money problems.
True. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it doesn't create the love and a bond between you and your son or your daughter.
You still have to
And
learn that
so,
presence,
man,
and absolutely. Yeah.
and when Robbins first offered me to go on the road, I said no. And he's like, really? Can
For
I
that
ask
very
why?
reason. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
said, because I homeschool my kids. I can't do that to them. He's like, oh hell, I missed that. He goes, so what if we paid to have your family travel on the road? Okay, now we're talking. And
That's
what an
really cool.
experience. My kids
Yeah,
to
I
this
imagine.
day. Can you imagine?
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's awesome.
On the
That's
road with
awesome.
Tony Robbins and all the proximity to everybody else. Because
Yeah.
he's
Yeah. Yeah.
got everybody and their brother coming to his events,
Sure.
every
Sure.
entertainers and musicians and rock stars and professional athletes and Olympians. I mean, they're all there. Producers,
Yeah.
directors, you name it. And so to have your kids in that environment around that was
So
absolutely
cool.
priceless.
So cool.
Yeah.
Well, hey man, my token question I ask every guest on the show is, one day when you do hire a CEO to take the reins for Firewalk Academy and Adventure, what's the one book that you're going to require that they read before taking over for you, and why?
Oh, wow. That's actually pretty easy for me.
Yeah.
It's The Big Leap
Oh man,
by Gay
my guy.
Hendricks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I That's a book that can get bypassed. Most CEOs
Uh-huh.
read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, so they've
Sure.
already
Of
done that one,
course.
right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this one kind of sits in the back. And the
Yes.
beauty about
Yeah.
this is that it brings everything forward, meaning
Mm,
that it shows you the difference between excellence and living in your
mm,
zone of genius.
mm.
And that's the biggie. It forces you to look at achievement versus fulfillment. And because, you know, if my CEO that would be working for me wasn't fulfilled, he's in the wrong position. I don't want him or her there. You know, again, I want them, I've got to create an environment that help them with that. And again, read that book. I do some private coaching, and I have every client read that book.
Yeah, I think it's a great book, man.
It is. I love it.
Yeah,
it's
fantastic.
It is a fantastic book. I absolutely love it. Great
Well, hey,
question,
Dave,
though.
if there was one takeaway that you'd really want the audience to absorb, up and coming leaders and CEOs from our time together today, what would that be?
State management. Manage your state, man. No question about it. And in addition to that, life is all about one thing: patterns. We all run patterns for everything. You know, you run a pattern of why you eat that food or you don't eat that food. You run a pattern whether you go to the gym or you don't go to the gym. You know, we create a story about our life. The other thing, of course, is that, you know, you want to change your life, change your story. But proximity too, and that is, you know, we are who we hang out with. You take the top 5 people in your life, you average out what they earn per year, and you'll be within 10% of that. So I say all the time, love your family, choose your friends, and choose wisely, because you will become who you spend time with. And Absolutely. Then finally, I think I heard something from Tom Hanks. I'm going to steal it from him. He was sitting there with De Niro, and he was talking to some other actors, and one of them asked, so if you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be? And Tom said, really without even hesitating, he said, "This too shall pass."
Yeah, I love that.
You know, things going good. Think you got your hands on everything and you got it all figured out. This too shall pass.
That'll pass as well. Sure.
Right? Everything's screwed up. Everything a mess. You think the world's falling in on you. It's crumbling. This too shall pass. So just wait it out.
Yeah. Awesome, Dave. If any of our listeners wanted to reach out and get a hold of you, maybe to have their company do a Firewalk adventure or to train the trainer, Firewalk Academy, what's the best way for them to do that, man?
firewalkadventures.com.
Cool. Awesome.
And as a matter of fact, if you go there and you're interested in the Academy, it's the tab in the top left corner is the Academy. Click on it. Let's have a discovery call if it resonates with you. And if you'll use code that for listening to your podcast, High Performance CEO, use code 6828, and we'll give you a substantial discount for learning about it here on your podcast today.
Awesome. 6828. Awesome. Thanks for passing that on to our listeners. That's fantastic. Dave, thanks again for being on the show. This was so fun.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Patrick. I really appreciate you having me on board, man.
Yeah, very cool. And for the listeners, please hit the like and subscribe button and help us spread the word about what we're doing here. We're helping the next generation of leaders and CEOs be that much more successful. With that, this is your host, Patrick Rogers, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks a lot.